guys, welcome back to the channel. And I've tried to film this damn video probably 3 times. I was wanting to do these videos out at the shooting range, but the wind just doesn't play ball. So we're in the podcast studio and we have got my old 303 Lee Enfield. This is a number 4 Mark II. It originally had peep sights on it, guys, full military spec stock with a bayonet on the front, and this was the first rifle that I got which belonged to me, which was licensed in my name. So I was given this weapon by a friend of mine's father many years ago. Also, I think I was around 15. I was 15 years old when I got this, and he had no use for it. It still had grease in the barrel. It was obviously a military issue weapon that they could purchase when they became. So what happened was your weapons in the military became available for you to purchase to the public. So you obviously had ideas of buying it to turn it into a sporterized 303 for hunting, but he never hunted and never got around to it. So I ended up with it, and the first thing I did with this old 303, as you can see now, it does not look like an old Lee Enfield. It's got the Monte Carlo synthetic stock on it. This 303 has had quite a few face changes throughout the lifespan that I have had it. Let's put it that way. So this rifle had the big bayonet sight on. I first took it to a gunsmith where they cut the bayonet sight off of it, and then he fitted it with open sights. As you can see, this has lost a lot of its protective cover and stuff. This thing goes in the vehicle with me nearly every day, so I don't beat up my other rifles because I'm quite happy for this to get bumped around. It's a real work gun. So we did that first, and I used this specific rifle to hunt bush pigs, as my dad was an avid bush pig hunter, and my uncle, and I've mentioned in a few of the stories before that they had a hunting pack, and that's what we used to do weekend after weekend. And this was the rifle that I took because we had loads of ammo for it. My dad had an old 303. All the guns in the pickup had 303, so if you forgot your ammo, there was always another guy with 303 ammo there to borrow from and get hunting. So for bush pig hunting, it was ideal. But what we found with this rifle, this old 303, was when we took the big bayonet sight off, it changed the whole recoil of this rifle. It used to be straight kicking backwards and forwards to almost a bucking mule, where it kicked up, the muzzle kicked up really high when you shot with it after that was taken off. So a few years go by, the stock, I sanded it down, and then I did some old school checker, kid playing around. It wasn't checkering, but it was burning. So we stenciled a pattern on it, and then I burnt it in with a soldering iron. And then when I got bored of that, then I stripped the whole rifle down again, and I decided I'm going to sporterize it properly now. So we sanded that stock down beautifully, coated it, really came out nice, and I decided to put on a scope. So I took it back to the old gunsmith to put a scope on for me, and he got some Parker Ale bases and rings that we fitted to the action, and off I went hunting with an old, I can't even remember, I had a 4x32 power scope on it, I think, if I can remember. Man, and we zeroed this thing in, and at 25, it shot well, and being young kids didn't really push it any further. We were always told by the old guys, if you can hit the bull at 25, you can shoot at 200, and off we went. So I remember taking this thing on my first ever mountain reedbuck hunt on our property, and I think it was probably the first animal I actually shot other than a bush pig with this thing. And I shot the mountain reedbuck. Everything was going well. Got it packed all out there. It's a beautiful big ram that I've got mounted in my house now. My first really big trophy on a mountain reedbuck. And then we went up to a buddy of mine's place. And this is where things all went a bit pear-shaped with this old 303. So I had some guy load up some 174 grain rounds for me, which he had choked the living daylights out of them. They were just way too overcharged. And this was creating what I didn't know then. I was getting a terrible flinch from this rifle. And with those rounds, I was actually getting damage to my rifle, which I didn't know about either. So we started our hunt, and everyone shot mountain reedbuck, and I was missing. Left, right, and center, guys. I could not hit the broadside of a barn door, let alone an elephant in the big toe with this thing standing 5 paces from me. And we had just checked it at the range to find out that the old Parker L base had a stud. The rings had studs that went into your base plate, and those had completely snapped off. So this rifle had thrown its zero completely. But in the process of throwing the zero completely, I picked up this nasty flinch. So my dad had his trusty 222 there that I'd hunted with for years. He gave that to me, and I finished up the hunt, and I got 2 mountain reedbuck. I think I got 3 mountain reedbuck in total, and that was my hunt, and we went back home. So we went back home and back to the drawing board of this 303. So we pulled those bases and rings off to also find that the old gunsmith at the time had put the base plate on skew. And the only way I picked that up was I fitted a larger scope, and you could ever so slightly see the scope did not line up with the barrel. With the naked eye, you could see it, which was messing up my zero. So with all of this, we decided that I'm going to send this thing to the gunsmith who did the silencer for my 30-06 and my dad and them's rifles. And we sent it off to an old German guy by the name of Rolf. And he took a look at this old 303. And he picked up a few things. Obviously, the base was skew because the guys had drilled the whole skew from the previous gunsmith. So he managed to fix that. Then we put these links, rings, and bases on. And what he'd also found was that the barrel hadn't been crowned. They'd literally just cut it off straight. So he recrowned the barrel for us, and we put this silencer on. This silencer has been with this gun for, I want to say, 12 years now, and it's still going. It's full of dents. It's still grouping. It's still shooting really well. And then I got it back, and it still had its original wooden stock on that I had sporterized, and I started hunting with it. So then I got into my own reloading. My brother and I, we got in, ammo was getting expensive, so my dad had his old reloading kit out there. He taught us how to reload. We went to another good friend of his who taught us how to do it safely and correctly and showed us a few tips. And we started reloading for all the weapons that we had in our safe. And this was the one that I decided I'm going to tinker around the most with, trying to get it. Everyone goes, oh, an old 303 sucks, they can't shoot straight. But modern day powders and modern day bullets have given this old rifle new life. So we got a great 150 grain load together with this rifle, and it was grouping bullet through bullet, 100 yards, you're shooting beautiful tight groups with it. 200 yards, I'm still shooting a solid group with it, and I started hunting with this thing. Man, I started shooting a lot of warthogs with it, started shooting kudu with it. We went on quite a few hunts where we went and hunted in the Tarka Mountains again, and I shot eland with this rifle. It really turned into something fun, and having the nice big 10, magazine capacity, 10-shot magazine, you didn't have to carry around extra bullets in your pockets. You put 10 in the mag and you're quite happy for the day. So a buddy of mine went to the Northern Cape to visit some family there and went into a gun shop because he obviously was looking, like I've mentioned before, we struggle to get quality stuff to reload with. And he spotted on the shelf there 125 grain Sierra 303 bullets. And there were 5 boxes there, and he phoned me and he said, Wayne, I can get these things. Have you ever loaded them? I said, man, I've only loaded 150s, but bring them. Let's see what we can do. So he bought them and he brought them down because he had a 303, but not this specific model, one of the others. Can't think of it now which one it was. And we decided to load these 125 grains. But now came the trick of our South African branded powder didn't give us a ballistic chart for and a powder measure to reload 125 grain bullets. It started at 150 and then it went up to the 174s, I think, 176 or something like that. So we had to kind of figure this all out, and he left me in charge of trying to get the load. And eventually I went with, I think I had 4 loads of 303 medium burn powder. So our original load in this thing was like a 42 grain load, and I started there with my load, base load, and then I worked it up, being the lighter, the more powder, being heavier, less powder. That's kind of how we worked it out. And I started at like 44, went up to 45, went up to 46, went up to 47. And I did a whole bunch of loads. And I kept going to shoot these things at the range. And I just couldn't get the damn things to group. And I kind of made my like cutoff point 49 grains of powder, like a solid 49 grains of powder. But now I was starting to look at my case capacity of, yes, am I going to start getting compressed loads? So I fired my last 48 grain loads, and I was like, this thing's still at 25 yards. It's like spray painting the page. I'm like, there's something that I'm missing here. And I was like, well, I've got 5 rounds left. Let everything cool down. Let's put the 49 grain powder load in. And goodness me, did this thing just love it. It absolutely smoked the page, bullet through bullet. That I had, and people are going to give me shit about this, a sub MOA 303 with a 125 grain bullet. It was unreal how accurate this was. But now we are limited to only what those 5 boxes that we managed to find. But unfortunately, I couldn't get my buddy's rifle to group with the 125s. It just hated them. It wouldn't. We didn't go into it and check the barrel twist rating, whether this one was different to that one and so on and so forth. We just couldn't get it to work. So he stuck to the 150s, and I ended up shooting this lethal 303 with 125 grain rounds. What a game changer, guys. And everyone goes, oh, it's too light. I shot Eland with this damn thing. I've shot Kudu with this thing with a 125 grain. 400 meters, I aim on the shoulder and bang, I whack what I'm aiming. But I can only get them. It only works with the Sierra 125 grains. I purchased some others where were like 130 grains. So I thought, okay, a little bit heavier. Try to figure out this thing wouldn't group as well. I got it to group nicely, but wouldn't group as well. But the bullet that I was using was terrible. It failed every time it hit animals. The speed I was pushing it would just flatten on the skin. It wouldn't penetrate. So we've just stuck with the Sierra, and it's been tricky trying to keep those Sierra loads here or get them here in South Africa. So I've got a great 150 grain load, and I've got a great 125 grain load, which makes it quite versatile for a bit of anything. For culling with the 125s, headshots, this thing's awesome. Yeah, if I want to go and do a bit more hunting with a nice solid thumping bullet, I put the 150 grains in. So we had a lot of fun figuring that out. And in this time, I was like, oh man, I really want to upgrade the stock. So this thing did another stock change before we came to this plastic synthetic stock. I gave it to a buddy of mine, and he stripped down the old stock, the rear piece, and he got some Rhodesian teak, and he laminated it in to the rifle and built up a cheek well, because if you look at these rifles with the 303, they had that sloping, that straight stock. It had no cheek well for you to be comfortable, and he built it up, made a bit of a pistol grip. It didn't look like anything that you see here, and I'll post some pictures of it, but it did the job. But the only thing is, it made it damn heavy, having that extra laminated wood in, but super accurate. You put it in a sandbag, it was accurate. So I decided to take this up as my rifle to hunt with in the Northern Cape with my dad and his buddy and my brother. We did a couple of hunts there, and we went every year as a group. It was like really, just to get away and go and do some hunting for yourself. Instead of guarding all the time, went and did some hunting for myself. And I took this with, and I shot an absolute beaut of a red hartebeest to this thing at 450 meters. Aimed in the shoulder, and I thumped it on the shoulder. Didn't have to, raise for elevation or anything. Just put it in the middle, and this thing shot super well. But I want to take you back to a story where I actually had to use this rifle for a client of mine that came out from the UK. And I've mentioned it before in a lot of my stories, where when clients come out, they hire your rifles, and the PHs, they'll normally come out in a group. All right, so you'll have 5 guys coming out, they're 5 PHs. We normally hire the same weapons. So it's either 30-06 or 270. The PHs who got a bit more bucks will have the 300 Win Mag, or, the 7mm Rem Mag. But it's normally a 270 or a 30-06. That's kind of the go-to. Couple 308s in the mix there. And that's what was on hire at the time. And I actually had to use this because I had a client who dropped my 30-06 and damaged the scope, and it wouldn't group. And then I had got my 270, and I hadn't noticed that the client before that who used it had also dropped it, and the screws to hold the base plates and rings on had shed off and stripped out with the movement. So I had 2 rifles out of action, and all I had left in my gun safe was this old 303. Headed to the shooting range. The guy sat there, and everyone was giving him stink now because he's shooting with an old military 303, and all the others have got their 270s and whatever, and they shoot there. They shoot the gong at 200. I get the client set down there, and I put him on the thing, and I say, well, this is what you're shooting with. Aim in the middle of the plate. Client doesn't trust me. He's just met me, so he aims high because he's thinking he's shooting with a 303, and he clean misses the plate at 200. I said to him, where'd you aim? He said, I aimed high. I said, aim in the middle of it, but this thing will smoke it every time, in the middle. And he fired, and he was like, I said, there's a trick to this 303 that no one knows. These are 125 grain loads. They're not your old school 170, 174s. You don't have to cast this to reach the other side of the bank. You just aim at the other side of the bank to get there. And we started our hunt, and did that oak have a crack of a hunt. It was a cull hunt, which was awesome. So we got set up right in the Thomas River Mountains, where they had these really wild blessbuck that moved through the properties. And what they did was a driven hunt for these guys. And this oak smoked those blessbuck one after the other with this old 303. And then we went further back in the mountains, that each guy was allowed to shoot a black wildebeest female. And I remember we were the wildebeest just didn't come past us, so we were the last guy to shoot a black wildebeest. And the farmer put us up on the mountain, hoping that the black wildebeest would come past close to us, that he could, have a shot at it. But I think with the driving, these wildebeest had gone around so many times, and they got wised up to where the guys had been sitting, and they went and stopped clear across in the bottom of the valley. Now, this was awesome because it was myself and my client. I had him set up on his pack. The other guys were sitting in the distance watching us try and get finished because they were parked up there. And I said to my client, I said, how confident you feeling? And he said, Wayne, I'm feeling good. I said, you see the female that's just stepped out to the left? I said, stick it on the shoulder. He says, damn, that's far. I said, don't worry, stick it on the shoulder. And he squeezed off and he thumped that thing also. And it did the death run. And it somersaulted. And the farmer came there and he said, did he just shoot with that 303 from there? I said, yeah. He says, we ranged it with the truck from where you guys are sitting and it was like 500 yards. I said, well, this thing shoots. So the farmer says, no, man, this thing can't shoot that far. I said, guys, this thing shoots. I keep telling you, we're shooting 125 grain loads. It shoots flat, it hits hard, and it does the job. So this old 303 has got a list of animals. Once we've solved all the issues on it, it's got a list of animals that it has taken out through the years. And then when my hunting was quiet and my brother was running South African hunts, he also has a 303 that he inherited from my dad, that he's got from my dad. And he went into one of the gun shops in SA and noticed they had these Monte Carlo stocks. And at the time, we were hunting a lot of groups of South Africans and we needed rifles to hire. So that's why it got this black Monte Carlo plastic stock on it, because it was being hired weekend after weekend. So it didn't trash the beautiful stock that I had made by my buddy. So that's all packed away, that one day when I want to strip this plastic off, I can put it on. But even with this plastic stock, guys, this thing has taken some unbelievable shots. And it's just one of those rifles that you have fun with. You know, my brother and I go and he picks up his 303, I pick up this, and then we've got groups of guys on the hunt, and no one's hiring that day, but we still pick these. And it's always that around the fire talk. We call it bra conversation, beer conversation, where the guys go, oh, what you shooting with? You in camp? Oh, what you shooting with? And there's a guy shooting with a 7mm. And there's a guy shooting with a 30-06. And the guy's got his 270 and with his 7x57. So a whole mixture. And the guy's like, oh, you actually shooting with 303s. So no, we're shooting out 303s, no stress. And then we'd outshoot them, because then we'd shoot a lot of animals and they can't believe how we're shooting and the distances we're shooting. And eventually around the fire, I said to the guys, the one guy was there, he says, there's no ways. And we had guessed that this bullet was touching the 3,000 feet per second mark, the 125 grain in this rifle. And typical, there's no ways that this thing reaches 3,000 feet per second. I said, well, bring your chronograph next time, bud, and we'll test it. Because I can aim dead on at 400 and this thing shoots flat. The only issue I have with a light bullet is wind drift. And it hasn't got a long BC bullet, so guys, the wind's going to push that. If it's a quiet day, you're going to be absolutely pinpoint. Otherwise, you got to, predict the wind drift. So he brings his chronograph the next time. So we finish up the hunt. Everyone shot their kudus and their warthogs and whatever we were after. And everyone brings their rifles out. So the big guy there with his 7mm, he shoots. And his rifle's pushing loads at 2.8 something. And he's hitting pressures. The next guy shoots, and he shoots with his 30-06, and he's running around the 2.8 odd. My brother takes his 30-06, and he shoots Remington pump action. We measure them 2.860. So another old buddy of mine comes with his 303. Says, well, if everyone's having fun, he's going to shoot with his 303. And he put a factory load through the chronograph, a Celia and Bellot factory load, 150 grain. And this thing was hopping at 2.760, something ridiculous. We couldn't believe it, how fast that round was going for a factory load. And then it was my turn. I loaded it up with 5 rounds. I squeezed the first one through. And it was 2,999. And the guys looked in, they wiped their eyes, they said, no ways. Squeezed the next one through, 3,001. Squeezed the next one through, 2,999. And it kept doing this. The fastest one was 3,001, and my slowest was 2,999. So this is technically a 3,000 feet per second 303, which I haven't heard of it before. I haven't met anyone who's done it, but we have done it. We've got the proof of it. There were 5-6 guys there, and they couldn't believe it. And it's like I say, it's just been a cool rifle to hunt with. And I carry it in the truck with me all the time. And you'll see we did baboon hunt gone wild. It wasn't a hunt that we were planning on, but there was a group of baboons that I managed to stalk onto. I shot the big male with a 150 grain load. These things are tough. I didn't put a great shot on him because he was running off, and I put my wiener dogs on him. And if you want to watch the full video, head on over to the YouTube channel, or you'll see it'll be linked in this video at the end of this video, and watch that episode. It's fun. There's no impact shots, but there's a crazy part to the whole story. But head on over there and catch that video. So guys, if you're enjoying these, hit the like and subscribe button, and also drop a comment below and let me know if you think that I should use these stories with my rifles in the new podcast channel. So till later guys, cheers.